Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Tech Tips on the Educational AD Podcast. We'll be right back with this week's Tech Tip. But first, we want to give a shout out to our podcast partners, Vital Signs Wall of Fame, the global community of women in high school sports, We Coach, and the Florida Coaches Coalition. You've heard me say before, these are four great organizations. You really need to check them out. And now, please stay with us. Don't fast forward. Take 3 minutes and listen to our podcast sponsorship messages. We want to thank Gipper for their support of the podcast. Go to Gipper.com and see how athletic directors are creating world-class marketing content for their school social media channel. Use our podcast code ADPOD10 and you'll get 10% off. You can do it in seconds on any device and you don't need any design experience. That's Gipper.com. We also want to say thanks to Huddle. Go to Huddle.com and change the way you see the game. Huddle is going to provide your school, your teams, your coaches, and your athletes the tools that they need to play at the highest level. It's going to be a professional grade solution to the challenges that you and your coaches face. Go to huddle.com and see why we believe in sports and teams believe in Huddle. Join the 6 million users and find out how to turn your school into a Huddle school. We also want to thank Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. Go to sidelineinteractive.com and schedule a live web demo, see their tables and their boards in action. They not only generate income for your department, but they also create the ultimate game day experience for your student athletes. It's one of the best purchases that I ever made as an athletic director. That's sidelineinteractive.com. We also want to say thanks to Hometown Ticketing, the leading digital ticketing provider to schools and colleges. Go to hometownticketing.com. They're going to show you how to set up and sell your tickets online, not just for athletic events, but for things like school plays and dances, school concerts, even graduation. And the best part, every step of the way, you're going to have a dedicated client success manager working with you, providing hands-on support every step of the way. That's every step of the way. Go to hometownticketing.com. Get started today. Simple and easy online ticketing. We also want to say thanks to Snap Mobile. Go to snapraise.com. Check out their entire suite of platforms that are designed to help athletic directors and coaches. There's Snap Store, Snap Manage, Snap Connect, and a whole lot more, including Snap Raise, their fundraising platform, which we used at our school with great success. And they've helped schools just like yours raise over $700 million. They even have a program where you can get your funding before you actually start your fundraiser. Does anybody else in the business offer that? Go to snapraise.com. Check out the entire platform. That's snapraise.com. We also want to thank Final Forms, the industry leader in forms and registration. If you're an athletic director, an IT professional, even a school superintendent, Final Forms is there for you, and they're going to help you have your best season ever. Final Forms can help your stakeholders with reminders about policies, about physicals, and all the forms that come when you have an athlete in the house. Final Forms can help your coaches with attendance and communication. And if you're an athletic director, Final Forms can help with eligibility, with rosters, all the reports that come across your desk. To take the next steps, go to finalforms.com/Jake. That's finalforms.com/Jake and get started with Final Forms. We also want to thank Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack for sponsoring the AD Toolbox segment of our interviews. Athletic surveys are a quick, easy, and affordable way for you to collect comprehensive data that allows you to evaluate and improve your entire program. Athletic directors usually only hear back from that 2%, the squeaky wheel parent or the disgruntled athlete, and we need to hear back from that 2% to help improve our program. But Athletic Surveys allows you to hear back from the 98% that really love and support your program. And that's a tremendously valuable tool to have when you're meeting with your principal, your school board, or that disgruntled parent. Athletic Surveys can help you take the pulse of your parents and your student athletes. And to find out more, go to athleticsurveys.com and see what they can do for you. That's athleticsurveys.com. Check them out today. And we want to say thanks to Wall of Fame by Vital Signs. You know, they're on a mission to bring your school's legacy to life. The Wall of Fame is an interactive touchscreen video console that will highlight the top performers of your school, both past and present, in athletics, academics, and the arts. But the Wall of Fame is so much more than that. It's an extensive content program that allows you to tell more compelling stories that'll better engage your audience. Go to vitalsignswalloffame.com and check out their great products. And when you're ready to buy, use the link vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake, and you'll get 5% off. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com. Check them out today. Hey, welcome back, everyone, to Tech Tuesday on the Educational AD Podcast. This week, you get to hear from me. I've had a number of ADs reach out to me and talk about creating a podcast for their school and their athletic department. And the expression I use is, it's so easy that even I can do it. We've been doing the Educational AD Podcast now for about 2.5 years. And again, we're not a school district, but I've seen it play out for school districts and athletic departments before. And let's go and start with the why. Why should you, as a school-based athletic director or as a county AD, create a podcast? Well, I think the most important one is it allows you as a leader to literally take the lead in creating and then maintaining the narrative about your programs. People are going to talk about your school, about your teams, about your coaches, maybe even about you, whether you do anything or not. By having a podcast, that allows you to get out in front and share all the positive things that are happening in your school. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, it's so easy to create that podcast, and the content is already there. Let's go and transition from that why into the what. Well, what would you talk about on your podcast? Well, why don't we start with all the great things that are happening, the wins or the learning lessons that occur with every one of your teams, varsity, JV, boys, girls, even down to middle school if you're a combined campus. How about the individual and team GPA accomplishments that your student athletes are churning out week after week, term after term? You can talk about the victories in the classroom, as well as those victories on the fields and on the courts, and also out in the community. If your kids are getting involved in community projects, the podcast is a great way to share that. And you don't necessarily have to be the voice of your podcast, although it certainly helps. Maybe you have an assistant AD. Maybe you have a coach that's looking for a leadership opportunity that has a little bit of tech savvy. And again, this is Jake von Scherrer talking. It doesn't take a lot of tech savvy to do a podcast. Give them the reins, task them with creating the podcast. And then certainly one of those segments, whether you do a weekly or twice weekly or even once a month podcast report, the athletic director's report should be part of that podcast, where they can interview you and ask you about things that are happening, goals, the mission, the vision, things that are going on, again, to take control of that narrative and keep it going in a positive way. Maybe interview student athletes, have the student athletes interview student athletes. I guarantee that you have somebody in your program. It might be a starter, it might be a bench player, or it might just be a general student in your school that would be a great podcast host or co-host for you to get your school, your athletic department's message out there. Speaking of your school, spotlight a teacher, show the connection between academics and athletics. Get your principal, get your superintendent, get a school board member on there. It's also having a podcast. It's also another potential revenue source by getting a local sponsor to sponsor the entire show or sponsor various segments. And again, it is so easy to do. Let's go and talk quickly about the how. And when I first decided to do a podcast, I was still a school-based athletic director. We had just done our FIAAA conference had been canceled because of COVID. And to make a long story short, we put out a series of virtual workshops on Zoom. This is before anybody knew what Zoom was. And we had a great response. And Josh Matthews and Don Baker, the two great creators and hosts of the Hanging with the AD podcast, asked me to come on their podcast and talk a little bit about what we had done and about our school. And I had never been on a podcast, really didn't listen to podcasts. And Don and Josh were so professional, so welcoming, so friendly that as I was, talking about our association and our school, I thought to myself, hey, I could do this for our FIAAA athletic directors and kind of give them a chance to tell their story. And when I got back home, I went on Google and I literally started typing, how do you do a podcast? And almost, not quite a month later, we had our first episode up, and here we are 2.5 years later. We've done over 600 total interviews, segments, and postings. You don't have to be that prolific, but again, it is so very easy. So getting back to the how, the first thing that you would need to do is choose your podcast platform. There's a lot of options out there with a lot of different bells and whistles. The one that I ended up choosing is called Anchor, and that's part of the Spotify family. In fact, they recently changed. They call it Spotify for podcasters. Anchor is still in there. But one of the reasons I chose Anchor was that it was free, and it still is free if you want to do it. There are also, it's very easy to use, and you can use your laptop. You can even record and produce interviews on your cell phone. I've done that once. Most of the time I'm at my office in front of the laptop, but it allows you to create and then share on all the podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and all the others, your message for free. And, you send that information out to your community, to your parents, to your kids, your coaches, and they can log in at their convenience. Again, it's free, and they can hear your 10-minute, 12-minute, 15-minute, 30-minute report on all the great things that your coaches, your student athletes, and you as an athletic director are creating. So again, if you want to pick my brain, I am always available. The best way to reach me is my email, which is jakestouchdown@gmail.com. Jake's Touchdowns, also the Twitter handle. And if you want to call me on the phone, my cell phone is 305-218-1325. And if you haven't been a guest on the Educational AD podcast, shoot me an email, shoot me a call, and we'll schedule you. We'll let you tell your story, share some best practices with other ADs, and also contribute to our athletic director's toolbox. So that's it for this week's Tech Tuesday. We appreciate you listening. Come back next week for more tech tips and just about every day for new content on the Educational AD podcast. And before we go, we do want to give a shout out to all of our great sponsors, Athletic Surveys by LifeTrack. Go to athleticsurveys.com to get a custom survey for your school. Sideline Interactive indoor score tables and video boards. One of the best purchases I ever made as an AD was a Sideline Interactive video board. I want to thank Gipper. If you're not doing social media marketing using the Gipper platform, you're really missing out. Go to Gipper.com. Tell them you heard about on the podcast. They'll give you 10% off. I want to thank Hometown Ticketing. Simple and easy online ticketing. They're the leading digital ticketing provider for schools and colleges. I don't think we need to say anything more. I want to thank Huddle. As a football coach, I used Huddle for years. As an AD, I made sure our school was a Huddle school. So go to huddle.com, see all the things that they can do for you. I want to thank Snap Mobile, the parent company, for an entire suite of platforms, including Snap Raise, flat out the best fundraising platform out there. Does any other fundraising platform give you your money before you do your fundraiser? I don't think so. Go to snapraise.com for more. Final Forms, go to finalforms.com. from an organizational standpoint, from a registration standpoint, for your stakeholders, your coaches, and you as an AD, Final Forms can't be beat. And Vital Signs Wall of Fame, bring your school's legacy to life with a Wall of Fame touchscreen video board. That's vitalsignswalloffame.com/Jake. Once again, we appreciate you listening. We'll see you next time on the Educational AD Podcast.